Hello and welcome to Tell Us Your Effing Story, a podcast by franchisors for franchisors. It goes behind the scenes with some of Australia's most interesting franchising personalities. I'm your host, Bruce McFarlane, with my co-host, John Sully, and today we're speaking to Jacob Spencer, owner and MD of Mobile Skips.
Now, Jacob, effing stands for franchising.
Mm-hmm.
You get that?
I do.
I don't know where your mind went.
Where yours probably did.
Yeah, I went straight to fucking. But mate, welcome. Hit us from the start. Where you from? Parents do all that sort of cool stuff.
Sure. Look, pretty boring background. I grew up in Melbourne. My parents, so mum and dad, had normal. My dad had a pretty great career in retail and technology, had sort of big jobs and headed up IT for Coles Myer, and when Myer and Coles merged together. So he was, executive jobs, running lots of teams of big people. And the funny story is one of the books that I read early on, so Rich Dad, Poor Dad, that's a bit like my life.
Yep.
I've got another dad who my mum's married to now. So my folks divorced when I was 12, and then my stepdad and my mum met when I was a teenager, and they're still together now. But my dad had lots of jobs, earned a lot of money, but wasn't very good with money. But my other dad and my stepdad had a lot of businesses. I was a trained accountant, but never trained as an accountant. But I learned a lot about business, money, and managing money from him.
Right. Okay.
What else did you do as a kid? Sport?
Yeah,
sport. What else? School? How'd you go at school?
School, not too bad. I didn't really enjoy school as much as I think my parents thought I should have. I was relatively, I could do well at school without putting a lot of effort in, so I didn't put a lot of effort in, and I think that led me to a path where a lot of my family thought that the usual stuff, you should be a doctor or a lawyer, and I didn't get the marks to do it, which is probably a good thing because I would have been a shit doctor and an even worse lawyer. I'm married to a lawyer, so and I could never do what she does.
Mate, you only need one in the family.
It's true. So no, I ended up when I was finished school, I started working at McDonalds, and while I was going to university in Hawthorn. So I worked for a franchisee, and I ended up working for them for almost 10 years, about 9.5 years. And I loved McDonald's. I loved talking to people I didn't know. I loved serving people at the register. I loved the high pace in a kitchen. So all of that really, I really enjoyed. And I was doing that the whole time while I was at university, and slowly learned a little bit more about managing people, did the McDonald's training, and sort of worked my way up in that world.
It's interesting, isn't
it? And really enjoyed the connectivity I had with my franchisee, a guy named Brian McMaster, who was one of the first licensees at McDonald's in Australia back in the 70s, and ended up having 4 and
probably did okay for himself.
Yeah, he did really well. I actually went to school with his kids, and that's how I knew about. Probably gave me the idea of going to work for them when I was younger. But I just enjoyed the learning about business, managing people, communication, and that's probably why I didn't stick it out at my university, which was a science degree, and then majoring in geology, and it just didn't really fit with what a good career was going to look like for me.
So when you're at school, before you get to uni, so you're obviously in the sciencey type subjects.
Yeah.
To go down that path, which is
numbers, maths.
Yeah, okay.
So
you're good at those subjects.
Yeah,
not the business subjects.
No, I never did them.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I think, if you're good at maths, you sort of end up doing science. There was no real guidance. It's just I did it because I was good at it.
Yeah.
Not because I really loved it. I think I would have, if I had my time again, I would have liked to probably do more business at school, and then do it at university. But
so what was the thought process around geology?
Where
did that come
there was
from?
some really nice people in the water skiing club that did geology.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a lot of thought. It made sense. I think it was the people, if I'm honest. Like, what?
So you're already at uni.
Yeah, already
doing
at uni.
science and kind of went down that.
Doing
path.
the normal stuff of science. You
Yeah.
start with doing your all your different subjects, and the people I was doing geology with, I just liked them more, so I just did more subjects, the second year that were more leaning towards geology, and you just sort of fall into it that way.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of thought.
And how long did that last for? How long were you doing the...
I was supposed to be 3 years, and I reckon I was there for 4, and I did about the equivalent of 2.5 years in 4 years.
Right.
Because I was by the end of it, I was working a lot at McDonald's, and then I just ended up saying, you know what, I just got to do this full time and stick it out there.
Start the whole time with the French in the licensees business.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I just go back to your dad? So he
The
was...
rich dad or the poor dad?
Well, there was 3 in there, wasn't there? Was
No, there's just 2.
Just the 2.
Just the
Okay.
2. Yeah.
So your dad, that IT for both those companies during that time, that would have been pretty cutting edge. When would that have been?
Oh, in the 80s? Yeah, so that
So
would have been...
really early doors
Yeah,
for-
early to mid-80s.
Did he enjoy it? How did he get into that? Do you know what his background was?
Yeah,
Was
Dad did. He did night school. He learnt information technology was called back then, and with punch cards. I never actually seen what they looked like, but he used to describe it as doing. You do your programming on punch cards and mainframes and that type of computing. And so all I remember, I got early memories of going to Dad's office at Myer and being put in front of a computer and playing Lander. Got to get this ship to land on this sort of pad, and you're moving it on an Olivetti computer, going from one side to the other.
It was the size of the office.
Yeah. And I think back then, also learning how to, at a pretty early age, I was lucky enough to learn how to code BASIC, and do some basic stuff with BASIC.
Wow.
And that really was interesting then. It's funny, I play it forward now. My business, so much of what we do in our business is tech driven. But back then, they were spending a lot of time making sure that point of sale and inventory systems were up to scratch. That was mostly what IT was in those big retail and warehousing businesses. Yeah,
right. And so where did he go from there? Did he stay with that company with the merger for quite a while?
He did for a little while, and then he went into the consulting space.
Right.
And did a lot of work putting systems into other companies.
And so your mum, what?
So Mum had her own business as well.
Yeah.
So she had a business that she developed from scratch, which is in packaging, cards, wraps. You might know back in the day there was these tiny little boxes that Red Earth and Country Road used for their packaging with corrugated cardboard on them. Mum invented those and developed a process for printing them out of recycled paper. This is sort of back in the late 80s and early 90s. And that's how my other dad and her got together, because he was in printing.
Yep.
And so they did printing and papers and all that sort of stuff together.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good on them. And work ethic wise, we always talk about this, but were they pretty full on? Were they totally work focused, or were they?
Yes.
Right.
Very much so.
Right.
I think it was you're either on or you're not. You're either in business or you're not. And I definitely saw that from both of them.
Right.
Yeah. Mum, early on, Mum was a single mum when we first got divorced and had her business as well, and she was just always relying on us to do our own dinners. She was around and helpful, and but she was by herself and running a business, and you can't look after 14 and 15-year-old kids and be around when you're doing that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just the two of you in the family?
My sister and I.
Yeah.
My younger sister, who's 4 years younger than me.
Right.
Yeah.
And can I ask, if you don't mind, what's she doing now? Is she in business or?
No, she's not in business. She's a Pilates instructor, and she's a nutritionalist. Yeah.
Right.
Health and well-being.
Health and well-being.
So
Yep.
you didn't have sort of major business goals when you were a kid, though? Just sort of fell into working in business when you're at uni.
Yeah, I followed what I enjoyed.
Yeah.
So I followed what really I like. I like complex problems. I like stuff that's different. And so I just followed what was enjoyable and fun and interesting. And when it wasn't fun or interesting anymore, I just didn't do it anymore.
So you're working full-time at Maccas and working your way through doing... So they're pretty structured in the training and development and stuff. So so you enjoyed that and got some sort of senior roles in the licensees business?
Yep. So got to managing one of the shops, and then an opportunity came up to go work for a company called Reading Cinemas as a cinema complex manager. Again, a little bit different. Running, so we had a bit of hospitality. It was like the version of Gold Class in a cinema. Was the one out in Chirnside Park that they just opened, and I was there for, gosh, this is a few years ago now. So wasn't there long. It was maybe 2 years before I had the chance with them to go over to New Zealand, and I did that for a very short period of time. And this was my first real lesson in overcommitting, thinking you know everything as a 25 or 26-year-old kid. And we bought the Hoyts Movieland chain of cinemas in New Zealand. And my job was to go over and integrate and run the whole business. And it was way too big for me.
Well, they must have thought highly of you to give you that job.
I think so. I wasn't experienced enough in. I hadn't quite yet learned that you didn't need to know everything, and I thought I needed to know everything, and that got the better of me.
So you weren't listening or asking the right questions.
Yeah, or just accepting that I didn't need to know everything, and
stick your hand up.
Yeah, you could find people that did and get help, and
So you didn't have support from here. Because it was all the management team were here?
Yeah, management were here. Oh, no, I definitely did. I think I just took too much on myself.
Yep.
And then it became all about the problems, and it just wasn't for me.
And was whose decision to leave that role? Was that your decision?
Oh, me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, they didn't say.
No.
Oh, really?
I remember, look, I had a moment where I was ringing my mum. I was in tears, and I was like, this is, I don't know what I've done. I've left Australia. I'm in this cold country with no friends, no family.
Where were you?
In Wellington.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It was, beautiful. But, I went over very naive, underprepared, thinking it would be a lot easier than what it was. And if I did it now, I'd do it completely differently and have a really great time, I think. But it just was... It was really uncomfortable and difficult. We had
it's a great lesson at an early age, though, mate.
We had strikes and the equivalent of a current affair. They wanted me to get on the TV and talk about how this big American company was going to ruin these lives of these employees, and it got the better of me. Great experience though, because it made me realise, that you didn't need to know everything to do a good job.
Yep.
And you could rely on other people.
So how long were you there for?
Oh, not long. Maybe 7 or 8 months.
Right. Did you get any earthquakes in Wellington when you were there?
No. Well, if you call 60 knot winds
every day,
standard,
blowing your car door off, literally blowing the car door back on the door.
Really?
Yeah, which happened once. But no, it was a really good experience. But if I didn't leave that, I wouldn't have met my wife.
Right.
So that was.
How did all that work? So you came back to Australia after that, or you?
Yeah, I came back. I was coming back regularly for sort of meetings with the board. About once a month, once every 6 weeks, I would be coming back to Australia. And on one of those trips, Sarah and I, when we knew each other, but Sarah and I spent a bit of time together. And I'd sort of started having these ideas around, I don't think this is for me. And I think connecting back again with Sarah made me think more about this would be nicer to be back here. And at the time, Sarah she'd been working for maybe 7 or 8 years as a lawyer, and had decided that I wanted to go and travel overseas. get a bit of time in England, maybe work, maybe not. And I was like, geez, that'd be great. I think I might come with you. I'm like, really? No, I think we'd known each other for, this stage, a couple of months.
So you were kissing, you were the boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yeah, we were sort of, we were dating and talking a lot. So, I went back to New Zealand. We were talking a lot on the phone. This is right at the end of me being there, and decided I was coming back. And then I think it was a couple of months. I was back at home, and I was like, right, do I get a job? Do I start working or what? And Sarah was like, well, I'm going to go overseas. I'm like, that's a great idea. I think I'll do it too. And I think I booked my flights before she booked hers. and we both just decided, look, it's either going to be great or it's going to be not great really quickly. We threw together whatever money we had, jumped on a plane and went travelling for 6 months together.
Yeah.
And without a job?
Yeah, without a job, living on a very small amount of money every day.
It's a good test for a new relationship.
Oh, it was great. It was, I think,
particularly if you're eating baked beans.
Yeah, I think we're trying to travel on about $80 a day. Yeah, which was not much in Europe.
In Europe, yeah.
Yeah, in Europe.
Jumping on trains and
jumping on trains or walking a lot.
So that's like late 90s, was it?
No, this is early 2000s.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And we were 26 when we went over there.
Yep.
Yeah. And so we, both of us, after a few months, I think we're 4 or 5 months travelling, and we both ended up working places that we really wanted to work. So I walked into the office of Pret a Manger in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
And just said, hey, I'm from Australia and I love your business. Can I come and work for you? And at the time, I think they said, yeah, well, we don't really know whether you know what you're talking about. So here's the keys to our shop in Trafalgar Square, and have a go and see how you go. And so I had my first gig there was the shop that's literally on Trafalgar Square, and another guy named Panu from England, he started at the same time. Both of us were from McDonald's, and he had the shop up the road, and so we had this sort of friendly competition going on who could get the best results. Pret was amazing at its systems and structures. Wasn't franchised; it was all company owned, but amazing structure and systems around people, and also how to get the most out of people. A lot of leaderboards on best performing on sales or managing your GP or your mystery shopper, all the stuff you would expect in a good retail environment. So Pano and I had a lot of competition going, and the two of us then got given areas to run. He got the City of London to run, and I think I got the raw end of the stick. I had the southwest of England, so I wasn't in London anymore. I had to go out into the regions and run shops that were a lot more difficult.
So he beat you.
Yeah, he did. He did. He's actually the group managing director now for the whole group.
Is he really? They're pre-packaged food, aren't they? And then it's only there for the day, and then they donate it to the homeless.
Yeah, so Pret was started by Julian Metcalf in 1986, and it's all about fast food with no nasties. And all the kitchens are in the shops, so there's no production kitchens. So they've got a huge cost of capital to build these kitchens behind the wall where most people make all their food each day. They come in at 6 in the morning, or sometimes 5 in the morning, depending on where the shop is. You'd have a little team brief, talk about what was going on for the day. And one of the coolest things that happened at Pret in terms of the people piece was the CEO, Clive, or Julian, when he was in the business early on, would drive around each morning, every morning, and just turn up to one of the shop's team briefs in the chauffeur-driven Bentley. And if a team member had heaps of really great cards written about them, says pre-social media and pre-digital days, you'd fill out a card in the shop and put it in the letterbox, and then they'd be read out at the office. And whoever got the best service, they get a little gold badge, and these gold badges were made by Tiffany's for us. So to get a Tiffany badge on your hat was a pretty special thing for one of the team members. And Clive would come. So when Clive would appear, randomly at a team brief, like, oh, someone's getting presented a badge. So I used to do that 3 or 4 mornings every week, which was a really amazing lesson to be learned about just rewarding. This is with 250 shops in England. Big lesson to be learned about rewarding staff and doing the right thing for good customer experience.
But also he's the boss too. Like so
staying in touch.
Yeah, staying in touch with the people in your organisation.
Yeah, exactly.
So, did you get any?
No. I was a manager.
This is a really shit story.
No, I didn't get the equivalent in my world was having your area be the top area. Yeah. Be the top, and we got that quite a few times actually.
So how long did you stay there?
Yeah. Almost 5 years.
Oh, right. So your wife was working in...
Yeah, she was working for Linklaters, so
big firm.
150
hours a week.
Yeah, doing 1 million hours a week, literally. And she was in insolvency and restructuring, so lots of deals, and we never saw each other, and we didn't have kids, so it was all about work and then travel. So we'd work, and never see each other during the work time, and then we'd go and spend the money that we made on and saved on going and seeing places in Europe, as you do if you're from Australia.
Yeah, right on your doorstep. That's fantastic.
Exactly.
So you came back when you were like 30 odd.
Yeah, 2008 we came back.
Oh, GFC?
Yeah, literally. So right when GFC started, and at the time, a friend of mine was working for Boost Juice in Janine. He was the financial controller for the company back then. I said, I reckon I could come and have a catch up with Janine. I'd love to meet her and see if there's an opportunity there. So I met Janine and another guy named Scott, who was our CEO of what became Retail Zoo, and I went and worked for Boost Juice and the group there for a few years. And
so what was the first role that you took there?
I looked after all our company operations.
Okay. So is that when Scott moved into the broad? Because didn't Scott do that before you?
Yeah, he did. So he was doing that. He just started, and he's like, I reckon you can do my gig. Because I'm sick of this.
To CEO.
I'm sick of this, and I need somebody who's going to do it. And I didn't have any, apart from my experience in a franchise in McDonald's, I had no experience in franchising. So all of my experience was running shops and operations and stores and people. So I got the gig to run all the company operations for Boost, which was a lot of fun. A lot of what?
How many were there?
There were, I think we had about 20 when I took over, and the idea was shrinking them down to just the top performers and get them to really do a lot better. There was a few issues and a few things that need to be ironed out, but company operations until that point really weren't treated as a thing. And so at Boost we wanted to make them the top shops we had, not the ones that were left over that nobody wanted in the franchise.
Yeah, because quite often that's the case, is that they're the ones that don't perform the buy back. But didn't you have the airports at that point, or
the airports for
Boost?
For Boost, no, we didn't. No, we didn't. I had them. We had them at Pret. So Pret, like the airports at Pret were a company unto themselves. Like one of my biggest shops, Stansted, used to turn over 150,000 quid a week, which is, and we had 92 staff in one shop, which is crazy, right?
They're not big shops either, were they?
No, they're not very big, but the kitchen and the underneath, you have kitchen with 12 benches running, and you're just making sandwiches on 3 shifts a day, 24 hours a day.
It's massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's big dollars.
Yeah.
So you've arrived at Boost around the time Riverside bought in?
No, 18 months before.
Oh, before. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
About 18 months, 2 years before, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's still very much run by the Ellises at this time.
Yeah, so we had Jeff Harris, the Beesons, and the Ellises on the board, which was great. And I came back full circle with Jeff later on with Street, which was really nice. But no, we sold to Riverside, about 18 months later, timing wise. And then I was with Riverside a little bit, but I actually left Boost and went and worked for Coles, thinking some history. There was a turnaround going on with Coles. I decided to go and do this gig with Coles and realised that it wasn't for me. So very much a black sheep in a giant, big machine, running 2 change projects, one for the meat department and another one for in the meat as well in an IT project for trying to do automated ordering inside of meat, which was fascinating and interesting. But big corporate wasn't for me.
So how long were you at Boost?
I was at Boost a couple of years, three years, then gone again, then I went back again.
So when you went back, it was for salsas?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, again, different part of Retail Zoo. But
Totally different.
Yeah. So the Boost, the juice business had grown rapidly all the way through that period.
Well, it changed a lot, really.
Yeah.
So when Boost first rolled out, there was tons of high street shops, like the one on Lygon Street, Swanson Street, lots and lots of shops outside in the weather, and then also mixed with the shopping centre model.
In the middle of the shopping centre.
Yeah,
Yep.
with the kiosks that nobody really ever used before. Boost started doing them. But then as the business moved along, inside a shopping centre with controlled weather, made a huge difference to the operations of a Boost juice bar. The ones in the outside, you'd have huge days when it was hot, and when it was cold, like through the winter, it was a tough business, really tough business to run. So over time, as leases came up and the like, the business transitioned to just a different mix of shops. So the numbers definitely went up, but they moved from one type to another.
Mm-hmm. So how did they end up with salsas?
So they acquired it just before the Riverside around the similar time.
Similar time.
How many stores would that?
It was either 3 or 4.
Okay, so it's really early.
It was super early.
Right.
Yeah, the main one, the original one, was down in Chadstone. When I say down in Chadstone, because we had our office above Chadstone Food Court for many years. It was in Malvern, and then we moved it to Chadstone. There were 3, maybe 4 from memory. 3, and I cannot for the life of me remember the guy that started it.
The founder, yeah.
Yeah, the founder.
Were they franchised, or they were all company owned with a view to roll them out as franchises?
Yep.
Okay. Righto.
So you learn a bit about Mexican food.
Yeah.
So you came on board. You're running it. Pardon me. You're running the whole gig.
Yeah.
Go and grow it.
Well, when I got brought back in to, it was grown and it needed more growing, and it needed some real help in how it was going to grow outside of the food court as well. Unfortunately, Salsas really hasn't grown outside of that shopping centre space. GYG was there. Sombrero, GYG, Salsas were really the 3, similar brands around the same time, similar sort of size. And there was a big concern at the time with the way in which food courts were being put into shopping centres. So originally you'd have one food court in one shopping centre, so you'd have the same amount of people for the whole shopping centre being serviced by that food court. The food court or the landlords worked out that they get a hell of a lot more money out of putting a second food court in. So there'd be a lot of redevelopment with the second food court going in, and a lot of shake-up with the way in which foot traffic would go around a shopping centre. And my view was there was a lot of over-investment in shopping centres and a lot of additional food put into places that made it really tough to get the revenue out of some of these shops as well.
Yeah.
So we had a few there that had second food courts put in and changed their model, and over time there was definitely a recognition we had to find a way to get outside of the shopping centre in order to continue to grow the business.
Right. So they were all just takeaway food court locations, no actual restaurant.
There was a few there was a couple like Knox Ozone was done at the time. And that was reasonably successful. The location was probably not the best, but it was an older location. There was we did a drive-through as a little trial. It was the first Mexican drive-through in Australia. Did
it work?
It did work. It was done around the same time we were looking at selling to Bain. So there was a bit of a distraction of what we could expand versus what we should do when you're in the middle of a sale process as well.
Right.
It was an interesting time. I mean, I learned a lot from the Alice's. I learned a lot from Jeff, particularly around marketing. I got, and probably the best lesson was when we were owned by others. So, there was Jeff and Janine, but then these private equity guys that were using consultants to tell them what we should or shouldn't do. And I remember Jeff talking about we just shouldn't change. Why are we changing this? Are we making a mistake here? And in the end, I think sometimes going with your gut on what good marketing is and make sure you market, you don't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars with consultants doing lots and lots of research. Sometimes if you just go and talk to customers and find out what they like and what they don't like, I mean, that is worth way more than outsourcing that type of conversation. And so I think that ownership structure did create a bit of confusion around where do we go and what do we do? A lot of people wanting to go in different directions.
Well, you've gone from you've worked in some big businesses, and then Coles in particular, like really large businesses, and then a business that's owned by the founders or owned and operated by the Alice's. So they were very close, like to the franchisees and what was going on. They were there.
Yeah.
To a private equity where they sort of weren't involved as much, and so what did you like? You've obviously, we're going to talk about you starting a business yourself after that, but that entrepreneurial spirit, even in a big business at Retail Zoo.
I think being a little irrational is good for business. Yep. So a real an entrepreneur that's leading the business, even if they've got other shareholders and other people involved, they've got the ability to be a little irrational in their decision making.
Take risks.
You will take risks and do stuff that maybe doesn't have the whole committee saying yes, or
and act quickly.
Yeah. And I think that gives businesses the edge. If you're not taking risks and trying to be different, if you're just following what others do, you'll never win. And so, but that's not easy to do either, right? Taking risks is really uncomfortable, and gives you that feeling in the bottom of your stomach that something's going on. And I've learned that when that feeling starts to go, like, oh, maybe we're onto something. If something's starting to feel a little weird and uncomfortable, then maybe there's got some legs here. And so I enjoyed that type of decision making. It can feel a little chaotic, but there's something really purposeful behind going with your gut.
You know when it's right.
Yeah, you know when it's right, and you know what? You know that if it's wrong, then you'll probably learn something out of it too.
So you spent 3 years running salsas?
Yeah, it was about that.
And so that obviously some things were going well, and you're looking at the model, and other things weren't going. GYG are growing at this time, and so your competitors in Zambrero were going all right.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so was there anything that you like looking back now to go, we could have done something differently to?
I think we were in a sales process for a long time. So we were trying to sell Retail Zoo for almost 18 months, I think, at that point.
They've just gone through exactly the same thing again.
Yeah, and so
distraction.
Yeah, it was a big distraction. Lots of meetings, lots of detail, lots of conversations, and it just became not that much fun anymore.
Yeah,
if I'm like, that's really the honest truth, and made me think about what do I want to do next. I'd always wanted to do my own thing by myself, and I used to say, why has it taken me so long to do it? But actually, now that I have been doing my own thing for 7 years, I know that if I had done it earlier, I wouldn't have had all this experience.
Yeah, you've learned a lot in all different roles. Yeah.
Yeah. So the once we did sell to Bain, and then I spent some time, I thought, well, we'll see what this is like. And it just wasn't. It wasn't as good as it was before. It was more control, more consultants telling you how you should run your business, rather than just letting you run your business. And you'll feel like giving them the keys. Well, here you go. You have a crack. See if you can do a better job.
So, which is what you've done yourself. You said, I'm going to have a crack. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of food involved in businesses, bit of tech, bit of this, bit of that.
Lots of food.
And so you thought, well, the other side of food is someone's got to clean up the shit.
It's true.
It's a big lane change.
So how did this opportunity to get involved in?
People ask me this all the time. It's like, well, how did you actually get from that to this? And because they don't seem like they're related. But what's really interesting is that they are very similar. It's just the product. The service is different. And how I actually did it was quite methodical. I made the decision to leave and to go and look for a business that I wanted to add my flavour to. I thought about starting my own thing, but not for very long, because what I saw work well at Retail Zoo was acquiring things that had already proven themselves and then expand the model from that. And so I saw it and was experienced with it. So I thought, well, that's good for me. So I went on this journey for a year or so looking at opportunities in businesses, and I just had some criteria, one of which was it wasn't going to rely on bricks and mortar. So I could see that
the shopping centres.
Yeah, shopping centres, the cost of leases, and also try and keep the labour model down. So those two things were a big reason for me not looking at food in bricks and mortar. Then I wanted it to be unsexy. So something that, and when I say unsexy, I want it to be in an industry that was unsexy, that didn't have a lot of attention, or that you could apply a bit of good old-fashioned hospitality to and really add value.
So you wanted to sex it up?
Yeah. Wanted to really just give, and I didn't see it until afterwards, but the waste industry. I mean, what do you think of when you talk about garbage trucks and skip bins and
smelly bins and garbage trucks?
And what are the people like that run them?
Yeah. Smoking, tattoos, exactly like me.
There's this natural movie that plays in your head of it's not going to be as good. It's going to be rubbish. It's going to be on par with what the product or service is. And so that really appealed to me when the opportunity came to buy the business, was that I think we could change this. I think we could, not that the business was doing anything wrong, but the industry itself just has such a bad reputation, and people expect bad service. And so what's really lovely and refreshing in our business is when you just turn up on time and do what you say you're going to do, people think it's amazing. Whereas
it's a pretty low bar.
It is a low bar. Like it is genuinely a low bar. And but the great thing about it is it's easy to put a smile on someone's face and give them a good experience and give them something that they weren't expecting. Because to me, good service is just giving people something just that little bit better than what they were expecting, and doing it all the time, and doing it over and over and over and over again. And if you can do that in a business, just consistently, not just give one person great service today and then everyone gets shit service or average service, but everyone in your business can easily get just that little bit better than they were honestly expecting, just raises the tide.
So at the time when you bought the business, I assume it wasn't a franchise?
It was.
Oh, yeah. It was a franchise.
Yeah, it was. Yep. There was a few franchisees, but they the reason they were looking for, at the time, they were looking to actually license it, and I ended up buying the whole thing. But they were looking to find somebody to do a master franchise, and we ended up. I say we because I call my business we. I ended up buying it because I didn't think that they had the right idea about what franchising should have been, and they weren't doing franchising very well. There was a couple of franchisees who had been there for a few years, and they just sold to franchises just before we bought, so they were new. And then we franchised it further from there in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Perth.
So what were the numbers? What did it look like when you bought it?
In terms of turnover and franchisees,
not so much
people?
that, franchisees. But...
Franchisees, there were four franchisees, and then they had company areas that they were operating. And that was because there was this Bunnings deal that they'd just done.
Oh, so they did the deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did the deal. Well, they didn't. They got offered the deal by Bunnings because the managing director of Bunnings hired one of the trailers and said, "Jesus, this is a good idea. We should do this." Then they tendered for it because they had to because it was Bunnings, and they got the deal. And I think they were expecting it to be a lot bigger and more amazing than I think they just put all their eggs in that basket. So they went and invested in infrastructure and opened in places that Bunnings wanted them to open without really thinking about the best method for expansion.
Victorian-wise or national-wise?
No, they went Victoria, but then they were told they had to go into Sydney, and they started a little operation in Sydney, but it didn't go so well. So when I bought the business, they were operating in Melbourne. And then we moved further into Sydney, into Brisbane, Sunshine Coast, Perth, and then Adelaide.
So what's the model? How does it work? You're buying bins and trucks as a franchise, leasing?
Yeah, so no trucks. So one of the benefits, our product is a skip bin on a trailer. And it's designed specifically for our niche and our core customer, which is mum and dads around their homes. So cleaning up in and around your home after a project or moving house or cleaning up Nana's garage because she's got 20 years worth of stuff there.
So just domestic waste, basically. Not
Exactly.
commercial stuff.
Or the trades that work in and around homes. And the reason why the product's designed that way is it's on wheels so you can get it in, down the driveway into places where you can't get a truck with a bin. It's got a lockable lid on it, so when it is out the front of your house, neighbours don't decide to dump it with all their stuff.
Yeah.
Dog poo.
Yep, like the bin that's in my street at the moment, with a big open top, and half the old neighbours there. Anyone over the age of 50 has decided to put all their hard rubbish in it, and they're like, "Damn, we need another one."
Yeah.
So ours stops that, and then because it's on a registered trailer, you don't need a permit. So open
Anyone with a tow bar can pick it up.
Exactly, but open top bins in most areas around Australia, you need a permit to leave them on the street. So with your council, different cities work differently. So it's a hassle, but it's also a cost saving too. So the product's designed to make it easier to do it in and around homes, but also because it's on a trailer, it's really easy for our franchisees to get the bin there fast.
So the franchisee takes it to the house rather than and then picks it up again.
Yep.
So the person doesn't have to have their own tow bar and go and pick up their own
No,
bin.
but they can if they want to.
Yeah.
So you can go to Bunnings, hitch it up, tow it home,
Yep.
fill it up, and then we'll come and get it once it's full. Because once it's full, it's a bit heavier and cumbersome, so we'll take it away.
And get rid of it.
Yeah, so there's those two options.
So as a franchise, if you buy a franchise, do you lease 5 bins and 1 van or whatever?
Yeah, so you
matters?
either buy your own, buy a ute, get a Ford Ranger or an Isuzu truck, whatever your fancy is. We've got a few different ones, but everyone likes a different car. But as long as it can tow 2.5 tons, you're fine. And then you lease the trailers from us. And the smallest area would need 12. The biggest the biggest one we've got at the moment has got over 50.
And you have time restraints for them? How long they've got them for? Do you rent them for a week or do you?
Yeah, the common time is for 2 days. If it's from Bunnings, you get it a little cheaper because that's the deal we do with Bunnings. You get it for 3, but you can add extra days. But most people use it over the weekend. Like a typical hire is, I'll get it delivered on Friday, I'll have it all weekend, and it'll get taken away on the Monday.
Because it's interesting, you said before that it's basically an IT business.
Yeah.
So how did you streamline it?
Good question. So we've got our own software. So early on, 7 years ago, I made the decision that if we're going to do this service model well, we're going to have to be able to really make sure that we can do what we say we're going to do. So we needed a good piece of technology that could do that. So we had to design it so if you put in the booking and it says I can deliver at this time, we were confident that our franchisees could. So we developed the software at its core to just make sure that it was really easy for franchisees or our drivers to pick up and drop off on time. We learnt early on, sounds really simple, but we learnt early on that being on time was everything. If you're on time, then you could add value and people would give you an amazing review or tell the service was great. If you weren't on time, nothing else mattered. Price, nothing. Even if it was free. If it wasn't on time, that was a bad experience.
Yeah.
So designing the system to make it easy to deliver on the service was a big part. There's a great book, actually, one of my favourite books, called Uncommon Service by Francis Fry, which is about exactly doing this, which is about designing the service model so it's really easy, not difficult, to deliver on exceptional service.
So do you have one of those systems that, you know, that when you're on your way from the depot, it texts them and all that sort of stuff? So
text messages go out. We're constantly developing our software. I find it hard to keep up with it. So early on, I was right in the middle of it. As the business has got bigger, there's people that do this now, and every now and then I get involved and they tell me to go away because
you're annoying.
Because I'm annoying and I break stuff. But yeah, the text message and emails our main form of communication, and then franchisees phone customers as well. We've got this concept in our business called celebrity service, which is adding a little bit of what would you do. The question you asked is, if it was a celebrity I was delivering a skip for, what would you do differently? And we've got a couple of franchisees doing this at the moment, which is born out of this question where they'll do a little video message and send it as a text on their way. So most of our customers have never seen the person arrive or haven't used us before. And they get this little text message, "G'day, I'm Brian. I'm just about to deliver your skip. Just wanted to show you who I am, so when I turn up at your front door, you don't get this shock of this in a person you don't know." And people are like, "That's fantastic." Little things like that they're not
little effort.
Yeah, require not a lot of effort, but are easy to do all the time, and they go a long way.
And so, without again giving away family secrets or anything, so how big now? What are you? How many franchisees?
We've got 18 territories. 18 territories, 16 are franchised. We've got 2 ourselves, and the rest is franchised.
Good on you.
And the plan is to keep some yourself?
Yes, I think we'll always will. In a service-based industry, it's much harder to manage locations as it is if you've got a boost juice.
Yeah, you're running. That's what you've come from a business where you ran the company-owned stores, and then you ran a franchise system.
And so the thing that you've got to, I think in franchising, it's as simple as there's got to be something that the franchisor does that adds lots of value to the franchisee, and the franchisee does something that adds lots of value to the brand, and together they've got real jobs to do. If you don't have real jobs to do, then the partnership never works out. And in our environment, we've got a really good synergy in that we have to make sure that the system, the marketing, the digital, the trade, only we can do that, and we have to do a really good job doing that. Our franchisees have to make sure that that experience that the customer gets is amazing, and if there's no way that we could both do the same thing. It's really hard for us to hire drivers and coach them and help them deliver skips and give great service when you're not sitting there in the car with them all day, and you just can't do that. Whereas if you're a franchisee with 1 or 2 drivers, it's much easier because you're out there on the road with them.
And who are the franchisees? What are they? Where are you getting them from, and what sort of person are they?
Oh, good question. We're getting them from all over the place, but I would say typically they're people that want to do something different, have a lot more control over how they work. Our job as a franchisee is out and about in the car meeting customers. So if you're stuck behind a computer and hate it, then this is the complete opposite of that. They've got to they really enjoy talking to people, or they thought they didn't enjoy it and then they start doing it and they do, which is one of our franchisees said, I thought I hated talking to people, but I actually really love it. And they have a high care factor for the customer. Like they get a buzz out of doing something for the customer.
But so I'll tell you a little story, very quick story that sort of blew me away. When we first started BDC ages ago, was at Lend-Lease originally, shopping centre land. And Lend-Lease had a fund where they would give you $1,500 a year and you had to go and spend it on yourself. So some people went to learn to fly fish and, all that sort of stuff. It was really cool. Everyone really liked it. So I thought, well, I'm a dickhead. I'll copy that. And I remember a guy who was our CFO had been wanting to empty his garage for like 20 years and he'd never had the time. He was just fucking around all the time, would never do it. And he came in, gave him this money, he organised a skip and blah, 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 and emptied this garage out. He brought in photos and it was the happiest I've ever seen him. In his entire life, it was so strange, and I'm just thinking, when your franchisees are delivering these things, they're probably to all those situations that you described, where Granny's got to clean out a garage or something like that, or we're just about to do a refurb. It's exciting, rewarding stuff. Does that make sense?
It is.
That's what I'd be like. I'd be, God, great. Finally, we're going to clean all this shit out.
Yeah. It's the outcome. It's having all of that stuff gone. It's having all of that space.
Yeah.
And it's also getting a lot of our customers don't really understand the waste industry, and they're a bit confused with, most people don't get skip bins very often, right? And so to have this experience be so much faster, easier, quicker, and hassle-free than you expect is
personalised. Yeah.
Exactly. And I don't know about you, but it's just nice when if you get more often than not, thanks, that's helped me out, that's been amazing, geez, that was great, I didn't expect you to be here that fast, or can you do that? I get lots of that type of feedback, which is just really nice and warm and fuzzies.
Yeah, that's good. That's really cool.
You've, as an entrepreneur, two parts. One is, what have you done really well with your franchisees to get them, enthusiastic and on the board and the relationship going well? And then as an entrepreneur, what have you really made a mistake? What's your biggest thing that you thought was going to work but didn't?
Oh, good question. In terms of franchisees, I think we're always working on connecting with franchisees. I think you can't ever stop. You can't ever stop that process of how do I connect more, how do I help more, how do I help them be better business operators. I think we're always doing it. I'll be honest with you, it's up and down all the time. Like we measure our franchisee satisfaction. We ask them every month about their business performance, their work-life balance. These are important things to see if we're trending in the right direction. But with our business, what we learned, COVID was really good and kind to us. Like we didn't have to shut. But what it was bad for was it turned us all into inwardly looking people that were at home, and we didn't connect enough in person. And so since coming out of COVID, connecting with our franchisees more, and particularly as a whole business, has been a big part of what we're about. They're out and about in their car by themselves, and you don't join. One of the big things you join a franchise for, you should. And if you're a franchisee thinking about this, one of the number one things is the network. A network of people doing the same type of thing that you can learn from and find out what they've gone through and the lessons they've learned. So having conference, asking them regularly about how they're going and genuinely fixing their problems quickly.
Listening to them and taking action.
Doing something about it. And if you can't, be honest.
Yeah.
And I have no idea how to fix that, and I'm not sure whether I can do it quickly.
Yeah.
Being totally upfront and honest. In terms of a mistake as an entrepreneur, probably I got two. So one's a funny one because when I first took over the business, I was convinced, we spend all this money on this marketing program, that offering a slab of beer to a tradie to buy an extra skip was going to be the greatest marketing stunt ever. And I was convinced. And the way it worked was you buy one, get one skip, and your second skip came with a free slab of beer. And I think we spent maybe 10% of. We made it a big campaign. So every 4 times a year we'll do a big campaign, and this was one of them. And I was arrogantly like, this is gonna be great. It's gonna work. 2 slabs of beer. It was the worst worst campaign ever. But what it taught me was you never ever know what's going to work in marketing. And I'm reminded about it all the time. You just got to keep trying everything and anything.
Cross it off the list.
All the time.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
So why didn't that work? I would have thought that's a good one.
So did I. Maybe you should try it.
Yeah.
You might do it better. Look, it was. I think what we learned from researching afterwards was when you need our product, you need our product. So we're not. If Bunnings runs a special on a 18-volt Ryobi drill, and it's half price, people will buy it and put it in the cupboard. But if we run a deal on a half price skip and you just don't need one, you don't get one. There's no, when you need it. And what we've learned for our marketing is to really make sure that we are there and available and ready for those customers
Top of mind.
At the right time.
At the right time when they need us.
Yeah.
Now the other one in terms of mistake was I did early on a lot of the time in business you think that the best way to grow your business is to grow widely, so to do more products, more services. And we decided to put in another product without a lot of research. And I spent a lot of money building these trailers that were able to take concrete and rubble, stuff our current trailers can't. And we didn't even test it, which was a mistake. And if you're a fan of Jim Collins, bullets to cannonballs is a good lesson for this one. So I just went straight with the cannonball and developed all these trailers and built them and spent a lot of time making sure they were perfect. Never tested whether the market wanted them or not, and it was a complete flop. And had to sell them all for pretty much nothing because they're not worth anything to anyone else but to us. So that was a good lesson.
Good lesson. Two other things. You obviously you mentioned street before, so you're on the board of street. You're involved in the community. So tell us about that. And then the other one, which the readings that you do, is the EO. So the thirst for learning comes through in talking to you. So the community.
Yeah. So street was my journey with street. I joined street about the same time that I took over the mobile skips business. And it was because of my connection with hospitality and also my connection at McDonald's. So I got a lot out of what hospitality did for me in terms of my communication skills, my confidence as a person, and I loved what Street were doing in terms of using hospitality as a way to get really underprivileged young people skills and work ready. And so I had a real connection with that. And then I got an opportunity to continue to apply my craft and help Street make money out of their enterprises, which then help fund the organisation's social side. And that's just, I mean, my biggest I suppose lesson learned through doing street and EO and other things is, you don't have to just stick to the one thing all the time. You learn a lot from spending time outside your comfort zone and trying to do new things. So street, that was why I joined Street. And Street's like any organisation through COVID and being in hospitality struggled but came out guns blazing, and it's now finally after many years got tons of government funding as well, which has been a big tick. But EO, I joined as well to be part of a group of other entrepreneurs in similar stages in business, either as a controlling shareholder or partners in a business. And EO is a great place where you can spend time being vulnerable in a confidential environment and do it around others that then can share their experiences of how they've gotten through the big mistakes or the big hurdles or the big issues. So EO's got a lot to do with my learning journey as an entrepreneur as well.
And setting goals and growing big plans and...
Not just setting goals, but probably breaking the mold of what's even possible.
Yeah.
Opening your mind up to really stretching yourself and reaching for the stars, so you might actually land on the moon.
Last question.
Only last one. Okay.
Oh, you got one. Yeah,
really
last
quickly.
One for you, and one for me.
So, and this is probably too long for this. We can chat about it afterwards. But every single council where I would imagine you're taking the rubbish will have a different price, or are they the same? Or do you...
No, so part of our model is we run through the front lift system. So our bins are sitting on top of a trailer, and we have big compactor trucks, the ones with the forks on the top, that come to our franchisees' yards, and we can empty up to 10 in one go. And then we contract with the big providers that do the right thing, that recycle where they can, and go out to private recycling areas and recycle and then dispose of the waste responsibly.
So it's centralised pricing.
Yeah, all centralised.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Last one, quick one.
Yeah.
10 years, where are you?
In 10 years, we are going to be the best domestic rubbish removal service in Australia, and when we are starting to make headway outside of Australia and the rest of the world, proving it to be the biggest and best in the world.
Excellent.
I know. Sounds a bit bold saying that. But,
no, that's great.
But there's the big companies focus on commercial. We're focusing on the domestic space where nobody else really is putting the time into it.
Good.
And a lot of the people that we work with are emerging franchisors like yourselves, and there's lots of challenges and lots of exciting things about that. What sort of tips have you got for other franchisors, having your experience in larger businesses as well as running your own?
Oh, biggest one would be two things. Be persistent. If you just outlast everyone else, you will win. And have the patience to be persistent. So I'll never forget listening to with McDonald's and Ray Kroc's question when he was still alive was, what's the number one leadership quality? Persistence. Over and over. I think it trumps everything else. You can have the best tools, you can be the smartest, you can have the best strategy, but in business, whether it's in franchising or not, as a franchisee, it doesn't matter. You're going to come across times where you have problems, issues, mistakes, and you've just got to be persistent to learn from them and ride through it and keep going. Because if you believe in where you're going, you will get there.
So you should have done that promotion again and not wuss out after one. But that's fantastic. You've got a beautiful pedigree of throughout your career of some great companies and obviously some great people. So, your takeaways have obviously been fantastic throughout all that. But I must wrap it up by saying you do look like a geologist, and I'm quite let down that you didn't do that.
I don't even know what a geologist looks like. Yeah, so
quick, where's a mirror?
Thanks a lot. Thanks for telling us your effing story. Great to have you here.
That's fantastic.
Thanks
well
for having
done.
me.
Congratulations.